Pinocchio 3000 is a Canadian computer-animated science fiction feature film. It follows the adventures of a robot boy called Pinocchio, who lives in a technology-driven city run by the despicable Mayor Scamboli. When Pinocchio avoids going to school, he befriends Scamboli's daughter, Marlene, and ends up being the mascot for Scamboli's new theme park, Scamboland. It turns out that this theme park is actually a trap built to turn innocent kids into robots to work for Scamboli. It's up to Pinocchio and Marlene to turn the kids back to themselves and stop Scamboli's reign of terror. So, what are my thoughts on this movie? Well, for starters, it's a good idea for an animated film. You know, translating an 1800s fantasy story into a futuristic sci-fi movie, that's kind of original. However, how's the execution of this idea? Well, the creative decisions are pretty clever, some of them. Like Geppetto is a science inventor instead of a wood carver, Pinocchio's erecting nose in its robot format is uniquely designed. There's also an exciting finale set on one of the theme park rides that's thrilling and action-packed. Despite the merit of these creative decisions though, the characters aren't very exciting. Most of them either have little to no personality or come across as annoying. A few of them have some terribly irritating catchphrases that are repeated way too often. My other problem with this film is its pacing. Scenes go way too fast. Too much is crammed into a lot of the scenes, and it doesn't help that some of these scenes feature more characters than initially needed. So it's hard to define what a scene is supposed to be focusing on. The film doesn't slow down and control the pace of its storytelling. It refuses to let certain things sink into the audience's awareness. However, I would say that this is just the case for the first half of the film. Towards the end, the movie does calm down a bit and starts to use characters appropriately. Let's take a closer look at the characters. Pinocchio himself not only has an ear-grating catchphrase where he repeats "save to memory" over and over and over again, but he's also not very interesting. Geppetto has designed him to be perfect at everything, so he's kind of precocious and severely dull because he's a flawless creation. It's hard to like him or even connect to him. Then there's Cyberina. She's sort of like the blue fairy of the movie. She's perhaps the only character that has a little bit of charisma in her personality, but I just don't get what she's supposed to be or where she comes from. She introduces herself as a local fairy, but what part does that play in an advanced future, in a sci-fi movie in fact? She seems almost out of place, like she belongs in a different movie. I mean, she doesn't look like a traditional fairy either, so is she a piece of visual software? Is she an alien? What is she? Who is she? My head hurts. We don't get to know that much about Geppetto, and we don't know why he's even made a son in the first place. In other words, he doesn't have a backstory or an arc, but he's a very passionate and caring father. Geppetto's assistant, Spencer the Penguin Robot, is very hard to tolerate because he has this running catchphrase where he quotes his relatives all the time, and it's so annoying. The film's villain, Mayor Scamboli, isn't that special. He's your typical corrupt politician character, but I have to admit that his evil plan to turn innocent kids into unemotional robots is wonderfully dark and creative. However, it's his character drive that bothers me. He seems to hate children and sees no purpose for them except in being his robot slaves. Here's the thing though, he has his own daughter that he loves and cares for, so why does he hold a grudge against children when he has his own? It's never fully explained why he hates kids so much. It's also a stupid prejudice to have, seeing as ridding children from his city will inevitably kill off potential future generations for the place he created. The mayor's minions are the worst thing about the film. They're painfully unfunny, mind-numbingly annoying, and 99% of their scenes involve forced slapstick. Physical comedy can be funny sometimes, I think, when it's done in fair doses and comes across as uncontrived, but this film milks slapstick to death. Marlene doesn't have any clear personality, but she does have an interesting backstory, her own problem. You see, she finds it hard to trust robots because she believes that her father loves machines and technology more than her. This is a tragic and clever idea for a character, but it's wasted in its execution because her trust in Pinocchio comes across as far too rushed. It's a shame because this could have been a very interesting aspect of the film, a little girl with father issues and a distrust in machines. But nope, it's being used in Pinocchio 3000, a film with a hyperactive storytelling approach. Now, what about the visuals? Well, the animation is really great. It's a balanced mix of wacky and subtle, plus it's fluid and expressive. But in the fast-paced scenes, it's a bit obnoxious and giddy at times. However, it's the visual designs that steal the film. While the futuristic cityscape isn't anything fresh, I mean, we've seen it many times in films like Fifth Element and Blade Runner, it's nothing fresh. Character designs are really unique though. The costumes, hairstyles, and many other aspects of these designs are all imaginative, and have to be the best thing about the movie. The voice cast includes such notable players as Malcolm McDowell, Whoopi Goldberg, and Howie Mandel, which is an impressive but wasted cast because they're given relatively nothing to work with due to the boring characters they have to play. That being said, the whole voice cast does a very good job. Their performances are clear, expressive, and reflect appropriate emotions. The original music score isn't that noticeable or memorable. It's made up of your typical orchestral pieces. It doesn't seem to have a distinct kind of sound or personality. Pinocchio does have a song number. It's pretty hokey and has some awfully generic lyrics, but its use of electronic music and autotune seems to fit the character himself and the overall tone of the film. To conclude, while it has strong visuals and designs plus a few inventive ideas, Pinocchio 3000 suffers from forgettable and annoying characters, features obnoxious comic relief, and lacks a meaty story. It feels like something potential was missing, like character development or much needed conflict, to make it a decent enough effort. However, I love the villain's evil plan because it's so sad and creepy. There's something tragic about it. The idea of turning innocent children into cold machines is pretty dark, and I like that. I think it lies in the execution. The fact that these robots can't speak, and it looks like these children are trapped inside a shell, as if they're repressed. It's also in the design. Any essence of life or humanity seems to have disappeared in these robots. Plus, there's an underlying message of sharing technology with nature, which is downplayed, but it remains existent. I give it 2.5 mechanical stars out of 5.